Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Boss Body Podcast. This is Sarah Haas. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I have a wonderful guest to introduce you to. Her name is Leslie Gaudet, and she's a self care strategist. And she works with women specifically in the areas of burnout prevention and prioritizing self care for overall wellness and physical health. And I know, and you know very well how hard it is because you're juggling so many things. You have career, home, spouses, partners, kids, grandkids, family, all these obligations, and it can be overwhelming. And one of the issues, especially with women, is neglecting their own self care. We prioritize everyone else and everything else above ourselves, and our health suffers so much in the long run. And that is why I wanted to have Leslie on today, because she's going to give us some tips and some resources that we can use to help us learn how to start caring for ourselves. Leslie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I wanted to mention that Leslie is also a mom, a wife, and a business owner slash entrepreneur. So you know very well what it's like being super busy and how hard it can be to really prioritize your self care. So I want to know a little bit more about you and how you came to be this self-care coach for women.
Yeah, sure. So first, I for me, self-care became really important when being in an industry for as long as I had been or still have been, became something that was going to actually affect my health in a negative way. So I've been in the industry of law for over 4 decades now. I still have a footprint, but now it's in my own business. Part of my business. I have a couple of businesses. But for me, I think when it started way back in my early 30s, I'd been in law for, over a decade by that time. And I started to start questioning, like, okay, I like this, but I like the money, but I don't necessarily like this grind as much as I thought I did. So into my late 30s, I started really thinking about, is there could be more, but what could that be? And thinking that, oh no, you get one shot. I definitely just let myself believe that there's only one shot. You get one, you're good at something, you do that, and that's your career choice. And that was the generation I grew up with. Like, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, and that's where you stay for until you retire. I did not go to college. I actually, right out of high school, I graduated high school and went right into the workforce and found my way into law. It was a choice, but I took a year and found my way into law. Um, I found and I got married pretty late. I guess you could say late. I was in my early 30s when my husband and I met, and we got married. And then we decided to start moving. And when I say moving, I meant we moved from different places. So I grew up in Canada. I was born in the US, but I grew up in Canada. My husband's Canadian. We started moving around. We moved to Florida, back to Canada, across Canada, down to the States. We've lived in multiple states, multiple provinces in Canada, and we've also spent 2 winters in Mexico. But back before this was even a possibility, as far as the last few years, for me to actually have like the lifestyle now where we actually move around more, and we collect experiences, was back in 2017. I'd been working full time for a law firm, and I found myself really starting to feel burnt out. So I'd let from my late 30s all the way up until almost my mid 50s um to really still be going hustle and grind. And then it was just really starting to get to me, to the point where, as I alluded earlier, that burnout became this overwhelming, I didn't even realize it, but this overwhelming force that was pushing back at me. And I was starting to feel that if I didn't take some drastic measures, that I might not be around in a year just to talk about it. And so, really to quickly to say what I did was a few months later, we just decided to move from California to Las Vegas. And I ended up giving my full-time position notice and said that to them, "I'd love to still support you, but I can't do it going into the office." And so we found a way for me to still support them. I became, my own businesswoman, and I started consulting services to them. So now I've been doing that now for 6 years. It'll be 6 years this Friday, actually, to be exact. So it's kind of weird that that much time has passed, but that's how I got to there. That's my I guess my work and entrepreneurial journey. I've been married now over uh just over 28 years, and through 2017 until now, part of my journey to becoming a coach and actually feeling good about myself was self-development and getting into the self-care and self-love world. And through that journey, that is what helped me to create, um, being a coach. 2018 is when I became a coach. And I started with just like mindset and emotional awareness because it was the emotional piece that I had to heal myself. As I've progressed and evolved over time, self-care has become even more encompassing. Like there's more things to self-care, especially when it comes to business. But that's kind of like in a nutshell, to be really quick and kind of roundabout what I do, how I got here. Yeah, self-care became so important to me to have that quality of life. Personally, I think it's an important personal endeavor, but I also knew professionally it had to be part of that as well. And that's where I started coming up with the essentials of self-care for that success in business.
Yeah, it's so true. Our health affects our quality of life. And if we don't practice self care, our health will suffer. And it doesn't just affect our health and our quality of life, it affects our ability to do our jobs well. And it affects our ability to be present and to show up for the people in our lives. And like you said, you started worrying, hey, if I don't make a change, I might not be around as long as I want to be with my loved ones. So I applaud you, for that realization and for making those changes. And I imagine that is really scary. I know how it feels to leave one career and jump into the unknown a little bit. And
Yeah.
that can be scary to make that change. And I think maybe that's part of why women might hesitate. And 'cause making those changes can be really scary.
I agree with you, but I also knew I was at that rock bottom moment for me that that was imperative, that I took a leap of faith, that I had to do something that was going to make change happen, because I really truly felt I was on a fast trajectory for a heart attack. And I did not want to leave this earth yet. I wasn't ready. I knew there was more for me to do. And also, I didn't want to be living a lifestyle where I had no quality of life. And that's where I found myself. And so that jump that I took, um, without really having a safety net, because I didn't have a job lined up for me. I did within a week, I went back to work. We took a week off just to go to Las Vegas and get ourselves set up, and came back, and I gave them 2 weeks notice without anything else in place. I just knew that if I didn't put myself first, that I don't know if I'd be sitting here talking to you today, Sarah. I truly don't know if I would be.
Yeah, and that can be so scary. And a lot of women are, especially if they're around midlife like you and I, are facing, possible medical repercussions because of their health, whether they're carrying extra weight, and that leads to higher risk of all kinds of diseases, diabetes, heart disease, and or are just undergoing way too much stress like you were, to the point that, we know that stress can have an effect on your heart. And so that was just so important to you, but you were talking about the mindset work that you had to do, because it can be really tough to start prioritizing yourself. We feel guilty. We feel like we're taking away from others who need us or who we have responsibilities for. We worry about our jobs and our careers. And like you said, sometimes we feel like, hey, this is my shot. I have to go all in with this. And if I don't, I'm going to fall behind. I'm not going to live to my full potential. So, how did you start making that mindset shift, and what was the shift?
So, as I was saying in the beginning, it was all around mindset and emotional awareness. So I took coaching courses, to certify myself as a coach, but I became certified in emotional intelligence. I did a lot of mindset trainings with different coaches. And for me, it was really about learning to love myself because I didn't like myself. I didn't like how I interacted with my husband. I always felt that our interactions were me coming from an emotional place always. And so I couldn't start a conversation without it, there being a lot of emotion in my voice. And because I knew I needed to heal some parts of me. And so really the aha moment for me, that the really true transformation happened for me, was when I was at an event in Las Vegas with another coach, and she was much younger than I was. And I'm always open to listening, doesn't matter what age you are, because I feel like we all have something to offer. But she was really intuitive. She'd been doing this type of work as far as self-development work, working with women for many years. She'd started when she was really a young woman in high school into college, and now in her adult life outside, working as a coach. And so I went to an event that she had held, and she had asked, it was something I had coached with her. She'd been someone I had gone through a coaching program with her a few months earlier. And I didn't want to address some of the things that she wanted to talk about. I got very angry with her. She invited me to her event, and uh, I said yes, I would go. And so I went to her event, and on that Saturday, it was a 2-day event, she asked if anyone in the audience wanted to come up and be coached. And my hand immediately shot up. Here I was thinking that I was there I wanted to go up and get coached with her about business, because that's what I had my intention on the workbook that she'd given us. And she is just so smart. Like, she just knew there was still work for me to do. And with her kindness, really beautiful way of allowing space for me, helped me to start talking about some of the things that I thought I had healed. She believed that, and I believe to this day, that even though we might think we've healed things from our past, meaning we think those things are gone because we're older now, they no longer affect us. So we never really dealt with them, but we're figuring, yeah, time's passed, but you don't have to go back and revisit. Those things still have a way of influencing us. And so she took me through a process and helped me to talk about things from my past. I had a lot of trauma, and I was able to release it. What was so beautiful in that moment after we had and this was live in front of 50 women I did not know. I think I knew a couple of women in the group, and it was being filmed. And I thought, as I got into it, it was really a transformational moment for me. And at the end of it, I had women coming up to me and thanking me for doing that, because they said they could relate to my story. And it's one of the things I really truly love being transparent around is my story, because I know that it has the potential to help another woman feel like she's not alone, and that maybe it'll give her courage to tell her story. That I was brave enough to go first so that someone else could be brave enough to go second. So that was the transformational part, pivot for me, that allowed me to really become super clear in how I was going to start my coaching career and helping women around this, learning to love themselves and letting go of like a lot of emotional trauma. And that's where I started. And then I started to transition into the other areas of self-care. But yeah, that's where it began.
That's so awesome. I want to applaud you for being so brave. I know that had to be so hard, opening up. And like you said, when you first started working with that coach, you were kind of like, no, I don't want to get into this area. Let's just stick to the business side of things because that was your comfort zone. And I see
Mhm.
this so much in women when they come to me, they want to improve their health. They want to eat better. They want to start living a healthier lifestyle, moving their bodies. And that's amazing. And that needs to happen. But what really is important is to dig under that surface of why they aren't prioritizing their self care. It goes down to their self worth. And like you said, loving yourself. And if you don't dive a little deeper, and sometimes I encounter resistance because it's hard. It's hard to get out of that comfort zone. And, they'll say, "No, I just want some meal plans. I just want some workouts." And I could give them all the meal plans and workouts in the world. But if you don't prioritize that, if you don't feel worthy of making yourself a priority, it will never stick and it will never become a consistent part of your life. And that's why it's so important to sort of dive a little deeper and see what is prompting these patterns to keep repeating themselves in your life. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. You kind of came to this realization, oh, I'm not going to feel better until I turn back the clock a little bit and work through some of these things that keep coming up for me. And what's so awesome about you becoming vulnerable is that you gave other women permission to do the same. And I think that's really important. A lot of us want to put on a smiley face, put on our power suit and be successful and achieve and be be celebrated for that because it is celebrated in our society. And self-care, thankfully, the conversation around self-care has started to change, and we're realizing how important it is versus talking about how busy you are or talking about how you accomplish this, and this, or how well your career is going. And so I love that you have made this your life's work in helping women to change that mindset and realizing that it has to go deeper than just saying, "Oh, get a little more sleep," or, these surface level type things. Because if you're feeling guilty about not having your house in order before you go to bed, you're not going to get more sleep. And until you clear up these long held false beliefs about your worth and thinking that you have to keep everything together and it all has to be perfect, you won't start going to bed earlier. And so
Yeah.
I love that that's kind of what you help women to understand and realize, and that you use your own experiences to to teach others through what you have learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can teach each other just by our experiences, because that also allows other people to say, "Oh, I experienced something similar. Oh, that's what you did. Oh, that sounds something interesting that maybe I can try." Sometimes when we're in it, we don't know the road. if someone else has already paved a pathway and is willing to be open about it, I mean, I'm always open about my past because I just feel, it's hiding parts of who I am. That means that I don't feel that I'm good enough. And so, like you talked about worth, one of the things I say about worth is that if you are living and breathing, you're already deemed worthy. Because when you think about how in a mother's womb and just the whole process of being the egg being chosen, you were chosen. So you're worthy already. You're here. So, there's no question about whether you're worthy or not. And so that's one of the things I like to say. I also think too, sharing about our experiences helps us to continuously, you know, validate that we're okay, that we have been through a journey, that we can be and do better based on our experience, and that, it doesn't define who we are. I always look at my past as part of the story, like part of the journey. It's not definitive of who I am as a person. It's just part of what I've gone through, and what can I take from those experiences to help me grow and expand and do better.
And I understand that you have some tips and some tools for us, what you call the essentials of self care. So, if there are women out there listening who are sort of realizing and seeing themselves in all these things that we're talking about, what are some of the ways that they can get started, or what are some of the things they can start focusing on to start improving their health and their overall wellness by taking care of themselves?
Yeah, so one of the things I like to talk about is like personal boundaries around your time. That's so when like my first self-care essential would be learning to say no, or really just learning to say yes at the right time that aligns with what you are doing. So that's putting boundaries around your time, the things that you're doing, what you're saying yes to. I think especially if you're a mom and you're a businesswoman and you have a significant other, and maybe you have other responsibilities also outside of your home, that it's really important that you look at how much time that you're giving to everything else and how much time you're giving to yourself. I feel that if you take care of yourself at the best that you can, all of those areas of your life, the people in your life, the things that you do, all of the things that you experience are going to get the best version of you. And you're going to get the best version of you. So it's looking at your calendar and being really super, um, being aware, like where you're at in your journey, if you're in business, and what really is important, but also looking at your calendar and putting on the the important things like spending time with family. Maybe even that is a monthly lunch gathering with your girlfriends. That should go on your calendar first. I think those are like important to put on your calendar first. The self-care related items, things like that. Going to the gym, if that's something that you do. I have walking on my calendar, or maybe it's spending a weekend away, making sure that you have really things that are going to fill your cup go on your calendar first, and then having clarity around what you're doing in your business is going to help you to use your time wisely and what you're going to put on your calendar so that you're not doing all the things. One of the things as an entrepreneur, I know back in the day when I first began, I was all over the map saying yes to everything. So I had no clarity, no focus. I was doing all the things, just doing busy work and not really getting anywhere. And that was frustrating. And it also it led to burnout because I was then spending more time sitting and working because I was trying to do everything every single day. So that's important. So learning to say no allows you to say yes to things, because when you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And I think you've said this before. The second one is asking for help. I think this was a big one for me. I always used to think that it was a sign of weakness. If I asked for help, that meant that I wasn't qualified to do what I do, that I was an imposter, that I wasn't good enough, that someone would question me, my integrity, saying, "Why are you asking for help? Shouldn't you know how to do this already?" But instead, what I found, because the asking for help part came with the additional piece to that of community, when I surrounded myself with really beautiful, amazing women and a community of women that support me. They support my growth, and I do the same for them. What that did was it allowed me to be able to be open and vulnerable about the things that I'm going through and asking for guidance, getting great feedback if there was something that could help me move the needle doing something else. Um, and also being able to delegate. Like I just recently hired two team members. I have a VA and a PR person, and that was scary for me because if you're a perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist like myself, you will feel like, oh, I have now that means I have to explain what I want. No one, if what if they don't do it the way I want it to be done? No one can do it the right way. You get yourself caught up in that. Then all you're doing is you're being a slave to your time, and you're all you're doing is then holding yourself back and keeping yourself stuck. So asking for help really opened me up to be able to do other things, but also to get that support that I was looking for. And then the third one is taking mental breaks. This is really uber important, even if you're a mom too, like taking those breaks, especially if you have a busy household where you have children who have after school activities, homework, everything that you can imagine for looking after your children, your household, is making sure you take breaks personally so that you're not always in the doing and you're like exhausted and you just fall into bed at the end of the day. But also the same thing in business is taking breaks, so especially if you are working on projects and it's important that you retain the information. It's really important that you take those breaks. It's like, as an example, you take a glass and you put it under your faucet and you turn the water on and you let it fill. It continuously fills, and at some point it's going to overflow. It's going to keep overflowing because nothing's staying in there. It's like you're not giving it a break to actually hold what's in there because it just keeps flowing out. It's the same for your brain. Think about your brain as that glass. So if you keep pouring stuff in, nothing, if you don't give it time to, I call it digesting because it's like you're feeding your brain. If you don't give it time to actually digest what you fed it, you're not going to retain it because you just keep pushing more stuff in, and it can become overwhelming, what I call mental clutter. And then you find yourself going to bed even with monkey mind because you have so much on your plate, on your brain, in your brain, and you can't process. So I always say taking those breaks, using maybe the Pomodoro effect where you work for 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and then you may work a few more times like that, and then you take a longer break. It's allowing, again, your brain to reset, recharge, like to re-energize, to digest what it's been fed so you can get back more energized and focused. So those are my top three, but there's more. I mean, I've got quite a few more to the list, but those are the top three because I think learning to say no helps you to protect your time. So you say yes to the right things. And no could be not right now, by the way. Not right now, it doesn't fit. Or if it's something that you really want, for example, you want to do something with one of your business colleagues and they're asking you to do it on this day at this time, and that time on that day doesn't work for you. Being open and just asking, I can do it. I'd love to be able to do this, but this day and time doesn't work. Can we try it this way? That way you're still being able to pursue it, but doing it where you're protecting your time and not saying yes and overwhelming yourself. Again, asking for help, which is so important, and those breaks. Those are my top three.
And those are amazing. I love those, and I agree 1,000%. What you said about boundaries around your time is something that I see a lot of us struggling with. And I think part of that is being a woman and the way we were raised as children and throughout our lives. When you're a kid, you don't have the ability to create boundaries because you're not in charge. Someone else is in charge of you. And a lot of times the messages that we get, whether that's parents or at school or, whatever, is that you need to do what you are told, be a good girl, follow the rules that will make people like you and that will allow you to be successful. And that does not serve us as adults because like we've said already, if you don't set a boundary, you're just running around with like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to do this and then do that. And you never get that chance to slow down. You never get the chance to set your own schedule and control your own schedule. I know a lot of us feel like our schedule controls us and we're just at the mercy of the day. It's like a big river flowing, and all we can do is swim and try to keep our head above water. And by setting those boundaries and creating your calendar, marking off time for things that are important for you, that is that's the key. That is the way that you put yourself in control of your day and of your life. And it's something that is hard to start doing, but it's something that over the years I have mastered and I have found it to be invaluable. My exercise time is sacred, my downtime and rest time, my sleep every night, and I don't say yes to everything, whether that's personal or professional. And you mentioned asking for help and delegating. Those are areas where I'm still working on. It's a work in progress. And it's another thing that's really hard for us as women because, like you said, we feel like we aren't good enough. We should be able to do this by ourselves, and this is a sign of weakness if we have to reach out or ask someone else to do it. But just like you sharing your story, when you reach out and ask for help and allow yourself to be vulnerable, you allow others to do the same. And you are setting that example and helping women to realize how important that is and how empowering it ends up being. Because we're all here on earth connected as a community to help and support each other. And I don't know about you, but I love it when someone asks for my help or my support. And sometimes we feel guilty asking. We think we're putting someone out, but actually, it's joyful that someone would feel comfortable enough and trust you enough to ask for your help. And so we need to realize that it's not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. And giving others permission to say, "You know what? You can't do it all." And that is human. That's not a failure. That's not a weakness. That's a human condition that applies to all of us. So I want to thank you so much for these amazing tips and tools. I know these are going to help so many women. And before we finish up, I know that you have a free guide. It's a self-care guide to help women avoid the burnout and to feel that confidence to make themselves a priority. And I'm going to put a link to that guide in the show notes so that anyone listening can grab it, because I know I'm going to be downloading it immediately, and I know that's going to be so valuable to so many. So I want to thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom and your story. I think you're amazing and I love the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I did want to just say one last thing. This could be a really amazing and empowering moment as a mom to be able to encourage your children for these same three essentials in their lives too. But we're learning, teaching them how to protect their time, to ask for help, and to take
Right.
mental breaks. Yeah.
Yes, and by leading by example, your
Yep.
children learn to do what you're doing. And I wanted to also, if people want to get in touch with you or read more about you, where can they do that?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, which is herextraordinarylifebydesign.co. Or you can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook under my name, Leslie Gaudet. I am on Instagram and also on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to me in those places. But yeah, this has been such an incredible conversation. I love to share about these because I think For me, self-care is the lifeblood to success in life and business, and I will shout that from the mountaintops.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie, for being here. And thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your day. And so until next time, I will see you then.